Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. As I'm trying to keep up with developments on the front in Ukraine, I'm using the Ukrainian media outlets to tell you the developments over there. Now, remember this is going to be a Ukrainian media outlet, so probably they minimize their losses and they maximize their gains, and vice versa for the Russians, which is maximize the Russians' losses, minimize the Russian gains. So this article comes from Ukraine Forum. It is from December 11th, 2022. It says as a title, War Update. Ukrainian Air Forces launch 5 strikes on enemy positions. Over the past day, Ukrainian Air Forces have launched 5 strikes on enemy personnel, ammunition and military equipment clusters. The relevant statement was made by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook, and Ukraine Forum correspondent reports. According to the General Staff, Russian troops continue to attack civil infrastructure and civilian homes all over Ukraine in violation of international humanitarian law and the laws and customs of war. This paragraph should be always ignored and always be here, so bear with me. The threat of missile and unmanned combat aerial vehicles, UCAV, strikes on Ukraine's energy system and critical infrastructure is persisting across Ukraine. In the Volyn and Polisia directions, the situation remained rather unchanged. No signs of enemy offensive grouping being formed were detected. In the Slobozhansky direction, the Russian troops opened fire on Kharkiv region's Strilecha, Krasne, 5 more settlements and Kupiansk. Okay. Now, in the Kupiansk and Liman directions, they used to have an offensive in Liman. Let's see if they still have it. Russian occupiers inflicted fire damage near the Luhansk region, Makivka, Ploshachanka, and about 3 more, and in Kharkiv regions, Temi. Now they give about 5 more settlements here. In the Bakhmut and Avdiivka, again, these were like the main directions where the Russians were conducting successfully offensive operations. So in Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions, Russian invaders continue attempts to break through the defense of Ukrainian forces. So there, the enemy used tanks and artillery to open fire on 26 settlements, including the Donetsk region. And it says about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Avdiivka, Marinka, they list about a bunch of settlements. And it says here, additionally, Russian troops launched an airstrike near Klishchivka. Whenever these guys are mentioning tanks, I got to learn that they mean the Russians are conducting an offensive operation. In the Novopavlivka direction, again, this used to be an offensive direction, Russian offensive. Russian occupiers are holding the defense and shelling the Ukrainian positions with mortars, cannon, and rocket artillery near the Donetsk regions, Volika, Novoslika, and 3 more, Vuhledar and Pavlivka. In the Zaporozhye direction, Russian troops opened fire on the Donetsk regions, Vremivka, and the Zaporozhye region, and I give you about 7 settlements. In the Kherson direction, Russian invaders shelled such settlements as Havrivka, Dudchany, and about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more settlements, and the city of Kherson. Russian occupation authorities are forcing Ukrainian citizens in the temporarily occupied areas to obtain Russian passports. Such measures are ongoing in the Zaporozhye region's Melitopol district. in Melitopol, the Americans, I was about to say, the Russians are also conducting now, from about 2 days, offensive operations from some sources. Ukrainian hryvnias are gradually withdrawn from circulation in retail chains, and people are forced to switch to Russian rubles. Well, if you're under occupation and this is your new territory, what do you expect? Russian occupiers are trying to financially encourage the local population to collaborate, providing cash assistance to retired persons totaling 10,000 rubles and charging a higher salary to loyal locals, residents who agreed to work in the institutions of the occupation authorities. Now they say these guys are doing this to encourage the population to cooperate. The Russians probably, they say, well, we provide services due to the bombardment coming from Ukraine. You see, one people's terrorists are other people's freedom fighters. The same here. If they would not give anything, they would say, well, the Russians just ignore those territories. That's the way it goes, like in the kindergarten, you know, the same kind of attitude. Well, over the past day, Ukraine's missile and artillery units have struck 7 Russian command posts, 10 personnel clusters, 1 artillery cluster, and 1 ammunition depot. So this is a very, very general view on what's going on the Ukrainian front. The details, I don't like to go into details because when you go into details, you find, okay, they killed this many, and then the guys say, no, we didn't kill it. Nobody was killed. And therefore, but with the general front, you can kind of, general information on the front, you kind of are able to figure out who's who, what's what. You take a map, look over the map, and understand what's going on over there. They say, well, the Russians are losing. Again, they're losing here, they're losing there. Maybe they give up some land here for later and then they take over. Maybe they do a gradual retreat here, let the other guys come in, and while they're coming in, they just blow the shit out of them. These are just tactical military operations here. I'm not an expert on that whatsoever, but I don't think basics the basics are not known to people, and a normal person should know the basics of a military operation. Anyway, the Russians are continuing to destroy the infrastructure of Ukraine as they started due to the Kerch Bridge, Crimean Bridge attack, according to the Russians. The Ukrainians zipped it and say, well, no. Nevertheless, the Russians are doing that. And unfortunately, the Ukrainian population is the one that suffers the most. And they're fighting like crazy for other people's interests. That's my assessment of this as a big general overview of what's going on in Ukraine, on the territory of Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.